When money speaks, it doesn't scream, it whispers. But those whispers can topple governments, create empires, and rewrite the destiny of entire nations. Think about it, wars may make headlines, but money makes history. Every empire that rose to greatness had a secret language, and that language was wealth, not just in gold, not just in currency, but in influence. We live in a world where the real conversations that shape the future rarely happen on the stage in front of cameras. They happen in private rooms, in hushed tones, with a pen signing a contract that never reaches the evening news. That is the hidden language of money. It's subtle, it's quiet, and yet it carries more weight than the loudest speeches of politicians. The psychological truth is this: human beings respond not just to words, but to leverage. And money is the ultimate form of leverage. It's the power to say yes without speaking, and the power to force a no without raising your voice. Philosophically, it's almost paradoxical. Silence backed by wealth can be louder than armies and governments combined. And here's what's fascinating. Once you start to recognize this pattern, you'll see it everywhere. You'll notice that the biggest shifts in history, the fall of economies, the birth of alliances, the survival of regimes, weren't driven by speeches. They were driven by silent financial agreements, deals so quiet that the average person never even knew they existed. So here's the challenge: don't just listen to what nations say. Watch what they fund, what they trade, what they sign behind closed doors. Because when money speaks, it doesn't just talk, it decides. Oil is often called black gold, but in truth, it became far more than a resource. It became the bloodstream of the global economy. And here's where the story gets powerful. When oil was tied to the US dollar through silent agreements in the 1970s, the rules of the financial game changed forever. Nations didn't just need oil, they now needed dollars to buy that oil. And suddenly, the currency of one country became the lifeline of the entire world. Think about the brilliance of this design. Without firing a single shot, without planting a single flag on foreign soil, a superpower positioned itself at the center of global trade. Every barrel of oil sold reinforced its financial throne. That's not just economics, that's strategy. That's understanding the silent psychology of dependence. Because when you control the currency of energy, you control the choices of nations. And here's the deeper truth: this wasn't just about wealth. It was about power without visibility. Politicians came and went, speeches echoed and faded, but the petrodollar arrangement whispered behind the scenes, shaping wars, influencing alliances, and deciding which nations would rise and which would fall into crisis. What we need to recognize is this power is rarely loud. It's disguised in agreements that look harmless but hold the fate of billions. The petrodollar was more than a financial move. It was a quiet revolution that shifted the global balance. And most people didn't even know it happened. So the lesson is clear: true strength isn't always about military might or public declarations. It's about creating systems that make the world dependent on you, even when the world doesn't realize it. Some of the most powerful agreements in history were never announced, never signed in public, and never celebrated with parades. They were sealed with silent handshakes, quiet nods, and financial understandings that carried more weight than any treaty. Nations didn't always need to declare their alliances. They proved them through loans, resource exchanges, and investments that spoke volumes without a single word. What makes this fascinating is that these unspoken deals often shaped history more than public declarations ever did. A nation lending billions to another isn't just offering money. It's buying influence. It's creating dependency. It's writing itself into the future decisions of that government. And the people rarely see it happening. On the surface, leaders may even appear to be enemies, throwing harsh words at each other on the global stage. But behind the curtain, money may already have tied them together. This is the duality of power: appearance versus reality. What's spoken publicly can be theater. What's exchanged financially is strategy. And if you want to understand why nations behave the way they do, don't just listen to their speeches. Follow the money. Money reveals truth where words hide it. The psychology here is simple: trust is fragile. Words can deceive, but financial commitments bind. When two nations share economic lifelines, They don't need to declare loyalty. Their survival is already intertwined. That's the power of silent handshakes. They create alliances stronger than signatures on paper. So here's the reflection: don't mistake noise for power and silence for weakness. Sometimes, the quietest agreements echo the loudest in history. Every silent deal comes with a cost. And here's the hard truth: the ones who pay it are rarely the leaders who made the deal. It's the ordinary people, the workers, the families, the future generations, who bear the weight of decisions made in secret. When nations lock themselves into hidden agreements, the real price often shows up as inflation, crushing debt, or economic dependence that can last for decades. Think about it. When a country accepts massive loans under the table, who pays it back? Not the officials signing the agreement, but the citizens through higher taxes, fewer opportunities, and a weaker currency. When governments trade away resources in exchange for short-term financial lifelines, it's the people who wake up years later to find their wealth diminished, their land exploited, and their sovereignty compromised. This is the invisible cost of silence. It erodes freedom without making a sound. And because it happens quietly, it's often overlooked. People may blame corruption, leadership, or global conditions, but very few ever trace the root back to the silent deals that started the chain reaction. Philosophically, it's almost tragic decisions made by a handful ripple into the lives of millions who never consented, never voted, never even knew what was promised in their name. That's the paradox of silence. What feels like stability at the top can mean suffering at the bottom. So we must ask ourselves who benefits when deals stay hidden, and who suffers when the truth is buried. Because history shows us one undeniable pattern: secrecy protects power, but it punishes people. Power in today's world doesn't always look like soldiers marching or flags being raised. More often, it looks like invisible strings being pulled through money. Aid packages, conditional loans, and economic sanctions are not just financial tools. They are instruments of control. They allow one nation to bend another without ever crossing its borders. That's the genius and the danger of money. It creates influence without confrontation. Think of it like this: when a struggling country accepts financial aid, it often comes with hidden clauses, policies they must adopt, alliances they must honor, resources they must surrender. On the surface, it looks like generosity. In reality, it's dependency. And dependency is the most subtle form of control. Because once you rely on another for survival, your choices are no longer your own. This is the psychology of influence. Freedom is rarely taken by force. It's traded away in the form of small compromises until one day a nation realizes it's not making independent choices anymore. And the people feel it not in grand announcements, but in rising costs of living, in lost opportunities, in a sense that their destiny is no longer theirs to decide. What's profound here is that money doesn't just buy things. It buys behavior. It shapes policies, molds alliances, and can even decide whether a government stands or falls. Wars may capture attention, but it's the financial strings, quietly pulled, that truly direct the play. So the challenge is this: never mistake quiet influence for weakness. The strongest powers in the world are those who don't need to shout, because they already control the script behind the curtain. History leaves us with a clear message: silent deals may build nations, but they can also break them. The question we must face now is simple. What kind of future do we want? One where money continues to whisper in secrecy, shaping policies and destinies without accountability? Or one where transparency turns whispers into voices that people can hear, question, and challenge? The truth is, we are standing at a crossroads. Technology has made the world more connected than ever. Information flows faster than governments can control it. And yet, the old patterns remain. The backroom agreements, the hidden contracts, the financial handshakes that never reach the light of day. But here's the empowering part: awareness is growing. People are beginning to see the patterns, to question not just what leaders say, but what they fund, what they trade, and what they promise in silence. Philosophically, this is a battle between tyranny and freedom. Tyranny doesn't always wear a uniform or march through the streets. Sometimes it hides in numbers on a ledger, in clauses on a contract, in decisions never explained to the people they affect. Freedom, on the other hand, is born when light replaces shadow, when transparency replaces secrecy, when nations understand that true power comes not from hiding deals but from owning them openly. So here's the call. Don't just be passive observers in a world shaped by silent agreements. Be seekers of truth. Question the whispers. Demand clarity. Because silence may build empires, but transparency builds trust. And trust is the foundation of any future worth living in. The choice is ours, a world ruled by hidden whispers, or a world guided by honest voices. Which side of history do you want to stand on?